Hey up everybody, hope you're doing good and welcome to the channel. Today I want to talk about an encounter I had with a random stranger while I was walking down trail yesterday. His name was Bob. We had a right good chinwag. We must have been talking for like over an hour. Anyway, we were talking about loads of stuff, but mainly we were talking about alcohol problems. And he opened up about his past issues with alcohol. And as a result of that, I opened up about my current and past issues about alcohol. And you know what? All it takes is one chance encounter to make you change your whole perspective on life. And his story really inspired me to change. And it made me think before I pick up that next drink, kind of. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, let's start from beginning. I went out for a walk as normal. I went to this trail that I don't normally go to, but I visited it often. It kind of loops round and round and round. There's many ways you can branch off and go in different directions. But I like to stick to the way that I like to walk on, because it's surroundings and everything else. And you do bump into some nice people on the way. Anyway, I bumps into this guy called Bob. I said hello, he said hello back. And I just mentioned to him about all the litter, the amount of litter that was everywhere, like mostly beer cans and crisp wrappers and all that. Because that day were a nice day, so I could understand people like a drink. But I just said to him, I says, I've never known it to be this messy. And Bob went, me too, like. I says, how lazy can people be? I said, there's bins everywhere, all they have to do is wait till they get to a bin and put it in bin, kind of. And he agreed. He says a lot of people just don't respect the countryside. I said, yeah, I agree. And that sparked the conversation of alcohol. Come out at blue and he just said, do you drink? I said, unfortunately, yes. I says, to be honest, mate, I drink a little bit too much, to be honest. He said, why do you drink? I says, I drink to escape reality. I drink to numb the pain about certain situations in life. I says, because I'm going through it at the minute with my dad because he's got dementia, and it upsets me sometimes, and I like to drink to kind of forget about things. And like I've just said, escape reality. And I said, to be honest, mate, I enjoy the feeling that alcohol gives me. I said, but I know it's only temporary. You feel good when you're on the drink, but the next day you wake up and all your problems are still there. And he says, I can totally He says, I can totally relate to where you're coming from, James. He says, would you like me to tell you a story about my alcohol issues? I says, fire away, mate, I'm all ears. Anyway, then he started telling me a story about his past issues with alcohol. He said, initially, in his early teens and 20s, he just used to go out drinking on a weekend. Just have a few on a Saturday like you normally do. He had a really close friend. He saw this guy as a brother. They were like that, honestly. They did everything together. Went to pub. He had him round for cups of teas. You know, they were chin wagging for hours on end about life. Basically, it was his soulmate. And anyway, what happened is, Bob didn't know at the time that his mate was struggling with alcohol addiction. He kept it quiet. Bob told me, he said, he knew he liked to drink, but not to the degree that he was drinking. And his friend only later opened up when things were going south. His mate ended up getting liver cirrhosis. And then on his deathbed, his mate opened up like, he says, look, I weren't being honest with you. Behind closed doors, I was supping fucking cans left, right and centre. He says it got out of control, like. He says to the point where it ended up being too late and he got liver cirrhosis. Anyway, his mate ended up passing away. And at this point, Bob he liked to drink, but he weren't a massive drinker. But because of the pain of the loss of his soulmate, you know, his friend that he did everything with, he went on a downward spiral, bless him. And he turned to beer. And similar to the reasons why I drunk, he drunk, to numb the pain of the loss. Not so much loss with me, but the pain of life kind of thing. And he drunk to numb the pain of the loss of his friend. And things like that. And basically just to escape reality. Because it fucking broke him. It really did. It broke him. Like I said, he did everything with his friend. And he just went on a downward spiral to a point where we were drinking. These midges are fucking me off. Sorry, guys. These midges are everywhere, man. I'm like, ah, God, do one. Yeah. So to a point where we were drinking every day. Just to cope. And it got out of control. And it was working at this point. It was trying to hold it together. Basically. Are you alright? Not too bad. He was trying to hold it together. But it was only a matter of time before he cracked. And he ended up losing his job. Due to drinking on the job. And then he was out to work. He couldn't find any more employment. Couldn't find another job. So he ended up losing his arse. And then Bob became homeless, bless him. He was on streets for about 3 or 4 months, if I can remember correctly. So, because of all the pain and the heartache of losing his soulmate, basically his brother, who he did everything with, he went on a downward spiral with booze. It's easily done though, isn't it? I mean, I can remember losing my grandma. It was one of the worst times in my life. Luckily enough, back then I weren't massive on drink, but I did drink to a degree, but I didn't use it as a coping mechanism like he did. But yeah, it's not nice, you know, like I just said, when I lost my grandma, it destroyed me. But yeah, he went on a downward spiral. So he ended up being homeless, like I've just said. I'm repeating myself, but you're on streets for about 3 or 4 months. You know, he used to sleep in fucking shop doorways, fields, anywhere he could sleep. He slept. And he struggled a lot, and he was still drinking. You know, at cold nights, a few beers would warm you up. He never turned to drugs or out like that. He was just a fucking drinker. It's like with me, I've never turned to drugs, and I never will. Because when you've got an addictive personality like me and Bob, mate, if I ever turned to heroin, I'd be fucking dead. But yeah, he was on the streets anyway. And he used to visit town and beg for money. For like a sandwich, some pop, or whatever. Or for his beer. And he always noticed his preacher was in town, preaching Bible and that. Anyway, Bob told me he weren't religious at all. He didn't believe in any of that crap. But one day this preacher came up to him. Basically said, "How are you? Are you okay?" Bob says, "I'm not too good, to be honest, mate." This preacher said, "Can I buy you some food? Yeah, a bottle of water?" Bob went, "Sign, yeah? I'd love that, thank you very much." So he bought him some snap. And he came back and he said to Bob, "Can I pray for you?" Anyway, Bob said, like, "Well, if you want, I mean, I don't believe in all this bullshit, but crack on, pray for me." So he prayed for Bob, and then he never saw that gentleman then for like a couple of days. But ever since that preacher prayed for Bob, he told me, he said something changed inside him. He says, "You're probably not going to believe me, James, but I'm telling you the truth." And I'm like, "Mate, I believe you 100%. You know, I can tell this is coming from the heart. I can tell you mean every word you say." And he said, "Yeah, but ever since then, something changed inside me. It was like a burning desire I had deep inside to change and to get off the streets and get my life back to how it were." He had a decent job before. He was earning some nice money in that. And he said, "Yeah, but," he said, "I never believed in God before, but fuck me, bet your bottom dollar I believe in him now, because he is real. Anyway, this preacher came back a few days later, and Bob got chatting to him about his issues with alcohol and things like that. And he said how much he appreciates him praying for him and how better he feels. He says it's crazy. He says, I never believed in Jesus or God before, but now I do, kind of thing. And Bob just opened up about his alcohol and everything that happened, you know, I've spoken to about in my video, about his friend passing away. And this preacher says, I'll make a deal with you, yeah? I get you in rehab, you sort yourself out, and when you come out, I'll get you in some temporary accommodation, yeah? Then you can sort yourself out and get your life back on track. Anyway, Bob snapped it up in a fucking heartbeat, do you know what I mean? He said, yeah, I'd love that, that's so nice of you. Thank you very much, kind of. So then, Bob went into rehab, he smashed it to bits. Come out a whole new person. And that guy, you know, he stuck to his deal. The preacher guy stuck to his deal, put him in some temporary accommodation, just like he promised. And he said, ever since then, Bob told me, he says he's dedicated his life to helping other people with alcohol addiction, drug addiction, mental health problems, etc, etc. He dedicated the rest of his life to giving something back to people that are struggling, because he doesn't want people to go through what he's been through in life. And I'm like, Bob, that's commendable, mate. I've got nothing but the utmost respect for you for doing that. Fucking bang on, kind of thing. And yeah, he ended up being a counsellor. And he said, right, now you talk to me about your issues. He says, I've balked on enough about mine. You tell me about yours. I says, basically echoing what I said earlier on. I drink to escape reality. I drink to numb the pain about certain situations in life. I know it's not the answer. I know alcohol's poison, but I still do it. It's like, I says to Bob, I said, I can go a week or maybe 2 weeks we are having a drop of alcohol, but then the cravings kick in. And I can't get over that hurdle of, you know, the cravings. I can't. It's like I need a drink, do you know what I mean? I can't get over that stage. He says, well, just look at it like this. He says, what you've got to think about is, he says, how old are you, James? I says, I'm 37. I'm 38 in July. He says, you're young now. He says, but think about the future. He says, I don't want you to end up like my friend, you know, being hospitalised with liver cirrhosis or whatever. He says, I do not want you to go through that. He says, alcohol isn't the answer, trust me. I says, but Bob, it's like I've just said. I can go a week or two, not an issue, but then come Friday, the cravings kick in and I've got to have a beer. I don't know how to get round that. He said, James, listen to me. He says, do you really want to quit alcohol? He says, give me a genuine answer. I said, yes and no. I says, I really do want to quit alcohol, but on the flip side, I kind of enjoy it. He says, you will never quit unless you 100% are committed and basically you've had enough. He says, you've got to be at that stage where you've had enough, kind of thing. And I says, I understand that. I says, but I don't think I'm at that stage now. But the main thing is that I'm acknowledging what's going on, and I know there's kind of a problem, but right now doesn't kind of feel like the right time. He says, yeah, I can relate to that. He says, I tried many times to quit, he says, and failed. But he says, the main thing is picking yourself back up and trying again. Never give up. Always keep trying to motivate yourself to be a better person. I says, I'm always trying to do that. I says, but I keep kind of failing to a degree with some things, especially alcohol. He says, just give it time. He says, just believe in yourself. They were like, I believe in you. He says, I've been through hell and back. This was Bob. He says, I don't want you to go through that. He says, basically just words of wisdom, man, and it fucking touched my heart so deep. You know, for a random stranger to be open and honest about his issues like this, you know, sensitive issues that we all keep, some of us keep bottled up. It's inspiring and it's motivated me now to think before I pick up that next fucking drink, 100. I know I've still got some ways to go, and I'm not at that point yet where I can fucking quit. I know I'm not, but it's coming. I've said in my previous videos, it's coming, and when it does come, man, I will find the strength and the courage to beat it. Yeah? That's what it's all about, and it's just, Bob's words of wisdom just inspired me so much, and it's gave me so much motivation, man. Yeah. So, massive respect to Bob for that. Absolute top guy. I mean, we were talking about other things. We were talking about conspiracy theories. About, like, the fake moon landing and certain things. You know, them little lines in the sky that are dropping all that shit on us. Yeah, we were talking about everything, like. It weren't just about alcohol, but it was mainly about alcohol because I can relate to that and he can relate to it. But yeah, massive respect to Bob. It's like I said earlier on in the video. All it takes is that chance encounter with a random stranger to make you change your whole perspective on life, to make you think differently. And his words of wisdom inspired me to do better in life, to think before I pick up that next drink, to think about my future, to think about my health. Yeah? Think about all those things that when you're pissed, you forget. Yeah, man. So, massive respect to Bob again. Anyway, guys, I'm going to end it there. Hope you enjoyed that video. Massive respect to everybody that likes, shares, subscribes, comments. I love you all. And hopefully I'll see you on my next video, guys. Respect.